Before we get to today's chat, just a quick disclaimer. This content is for educational and informational purposes only, and by no means financial advice. All investors are encouraged to do their own due diligence and are responsible for their own investment decisions. This week, I am incredibly excited to have Davy Yap on with me. She is from Blossom, but more importantly, she is truly like the millionaire next door. But here to share that story with all of us is Davy yourself. So first and foremost, welcome to Masters of the Market, and I want to dive right in with you and ask you the first question here. What exactly is your story, and how'd you get to where you are today?
Thanks so much for having me on your podcast. I'm super honored. So my story is I'm from Long Beach, California, and my parents are refugees from Cambodia. They immigrated in the 90s to Long Beach, which has the most Khmer people outside of Cambodia. I grew up really low income. We had food stamps. My grandparents lived off of Social Security and Medicaid and all those other like social welfare programs. Grew up, my parents emphasized the importance of education, got my bachelor's, teacher credential, and master's in teaching. Now I'm a teacher with a $200,000 net worth at 30 years old.
Now, I heard a little bit of your story. I got to be transparent and honest with everybody. We were both on the Blossom tour together, and when you started to speak, I tuned in a little bit and then needed to zone out entirely because I was like, this story is too good, too rich not to tell on the podcast. I wanted to hear it first with everybody else. But what I do know is, of course, you're a teacher. And what I also know is so many people think a teacher or some of the similar jobs and roles that are out there, well, they just simply can't invest the way that everybody else is investing because they don't make enough. Mm-hmm. What do you say to those people?
First, I think people focus a lot on saving, which is good. That's a really great start. But really, it's also focusing on increasing your income. So teachers have a lot of great skills, transferable skills, and ways to increase your income. So how I did it was getting my master's. I got a pay raise. I also had a very high savings rate, making more like side hustles. Like I did focus groups, and within about 15 months, I brought in about $9,000 where you get paid for speaking to a company about your opinions. And I say on average, teachers don't make a lot, but it doesn't really matter how much income you make, it's how much you save and invest. So my savings rate when I was living with my folks was about 60 to 70%. And even living in an apartment with my boyfriend, I probably save about 30 to 40% of my income and invest it.
So Davy, where does this notion then come from that you need to make a certain amount and it's not necessarily about saving as much as it is about making more?
I think where it comes from is I think people assume that just because you make a lot of money that you're financially literate. Where I've seen a lot of articles saying like this person who makes six figures is living paycheck to paycheck. So I think people just have this like notion or misconception that because somebody knows how to earn money, that they know how to save and invest money. But those are two different skills.
I want to dive in deeper there. Talk to us about those exact skills.
For example, like I'm not really equipped to like negotiate a salary because teachers can't really negotiate their salaries. They can only just get more education. So where I make up for it would be the saving and investing. So growing up low income with my family, they've taught like keep saving, don't spend your money, don't take on debt, like don't take on student loans or like a car loan or except for a mortgage. Families love that. It's like, do not take any type of debt unless you buy a house. We want you to buy a house now. Like my parents and my aunt still like pester me like you need to buy a house, but like that's not my goal right now. So I've learned to save early on as a kid, and even when I was in college, I would work 2 to 3 jobs and I would save most of my income. I only spent it on rent, food, and eating out sometimes, and a little bit of shopping. So saving in itself is a skill. Having that long-term, instead of instant gratification, that the opposite, right? Having patience and knowing that your hard work is going to pay off. And then the second skill is investing. So I had to teach myself how to invest, and that's another skill entirely from saving.
So let's talk about investing for a little bit. Before we get it all into the nitty-gritty of your portfolio, I want to kind of start with the basics. How did you even get started investing? Was that an idea from your folks? Was it something you read about? If I recall correctly, there was a story, I think you were working already at the school or you were in graduate school, but I want to let you tell it. I just know it was a fascinating story, and I feel it's like unlike anything I've ever heard.
Yeah. So it was really serendipitous. I was a student teacher, meaning I still was training to be a teacher, and I was observing different teachers, and one of them was going over the crash of the stock market. After class, I was like, "Hey, can you talk to me more about stocks?" And she goes, "Yeah, they're when you buy a piece of a company, and if they do well, you get money. If they don't do well, you lose money. But they're really great. You should start investing." I used my investment money to pay off my parents' dentures. And I said, "Okay, like tell me more." And she goes, "Okay, well, you should just start off with Qualcomm. My husband works there." Wink, wink. And I was like, "Okay, like this lady's kind of crazy." But the next day, believe I opened a Roth IRA or a brokerage account, and I bought a few shares of Qualcomm, and then the next day it went up like $3. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is what investing is." And then I just got hooked and started reading and just breathing like investment knowledge and content after that.
Was there fear there for you at all? Like not knowing a whole lot, but jumping in anyways? I mean, typically someone will open up the brokerage account, and even when they see money go up, the first couple of days, it does come down.
Yeah, and it did. So I think I started in November 2020. There was a lot of fear, Ari. Prior, I did know a little bit about it. I was looking into stocks, like trying to understand the PE ratios and all those different metrics and expense ratios. For me, I was like, you know what? Let me just take some measured risk. Let me just invest about $140. And at that time, if I lose that money, it would be insignificant. So there was fear, and it was when I bought it, I was like, my nervous system was kicking in, like a bear was like gonna eat me alive or something. But then I learned, okay, just let it sit, check, and I would check on it every day. But I remember people say, don't sell long term, like keep it in the market. So I just had to let my emotions slide. So I was fearful for sure.
As much as you were fearful, I mean, look, it still takes a bit of risk. And also, like, the way I feel like you were already living, like you already knew how to save. There is that kind of immigrant, or I'll say in your case, a refugee mentality where it's like, I have to make it. So how much of that do you think plays a role in your ability to take some risk, which is healthy risk? Everybody should take on, I think, stock market risk. But how much of a role does that play? And what would you share to people that really, I mean, they didn't come from the background that you came from, and they're not, say, as hungry as you might be?
Yeah, I think I would share with them, definitely growing up in a like immigrant refugee household, my parents teach me to play it safe. Be respectful, like don't talk back, be a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer and make good money. Part of me, like you said, I do have that drive, and I think I was just thinking long term. So I was also very lucky. My other master teacher had our students do controversial issues. And one of them was, how do we fund Social Security? Either we increase the age or we tax people more. So I was like, oh my gosh, let me think about that. If I only save, let's say, $30,000 for 20 years, was that $600,000? And then for me, I'm always like, worst case scenario, if I live until like 99, my money's gonna run out before I die. So how do people have a good quality of life and live a long time? And I figured, I have to invest. And at the time, I was like, 24? So I just knew, okay, research is correct. If you just invest long term into like broad index funds, or even if, let's say, you were risky and take a stock, you're more likely to gain, money instead of lose it. So to me, even though I was fearful, I just channeled in my logical side of my brain, and it overrode the emotional part of my brain to not invest.
Okay, now let me ask you about a different group of people that I feel like the both of us probably will speak to quite a bit. And these people are typically the ones that will say, hey, I have like some money on the side, but I don't have $5,000 to invest, so therefore I'm not. What do we say to them to get them involved, invested, and like just in the market? Because this is, when I take a look at how far you've come, how far I've come, how far any of us who are invested, like we all started small.
Yeah, I want to tell them, like, I want to shake them lovingly, like, you need to get started. Because I literally had a friend last week who was like, oh, Davy, I'll just wait until I get my bonus. I was like, that's going to be another 5 months. Let's pretend her name is Ashley. Ashley, you need to start now. You can start with $50. I literally told her that. You can start with $50 a month. There's now fractional shares. So when I started with Vanguard to invest in index funds, you had to have a $3,000 minimum, but it's great that other brokerage accounts, you can buy part of a share or part of a stock or ETF. So I would tell them, please do not keep waiting. Like, do not make more excuses. It's an excuse. You need to invest whatever money you have now and just figure it out and just start small. You actually get more knowledge and experience doing the thing, taking action and learning from what you just did, seeing the investments go up and down versus just contemplating it and doing more research.
So where does this contemplation come from? Is it really fear? Like, do you think it's just fear at the end of the day for people? I never understood it because from such a young age, I was just like thinking about the market and wanting to get invested and understanding numbers and compounding. But for other people, like, it kind of baffles me sometimes when they're like, I'd rather just put all of this here or spend it over here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I think, and it's funny because, a lot of my friends I talk to are educators. They're very highly educated, but I think in terms of finances, they're not as educated in it. So I feel like, and they're not, they lack experience. So I think some people have this like misconception that only rich people invest, or if you have a certain amount in savings, then I can invest. Because that's what it really sounds like. It sounds like an if then formula, where in fact, life is not really like a formula. It's you taking action. It's like experimenting, right? You have to think like a scientist. Okay, let me put in $10 and then see what happens if I invest into Apple or let's say VGT. And then after that, you see the data and see what happens. And then you collect that data and then you form your own conclusions. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is I think just people just need to have that experience to actually invest, because right now they're just having misconceptions that they need a certain amount to be ready. When ready, I love this quote, ready is not a feeling, readiness is a decision.
I also love what you shared, which was that life is not a formula, because that's certainly the case. And I think a lot of people think there's like some esoteric formula out there that if I do X, Y, and Z, then I will have this and I'll have to wait until that. And it's like, no, none of that is true. So with that being said, Davy, how did you start? I mean, first you invested in Qualcomm, which did well. You earned $3 right off the bat. But what happened after that?
So what happened after that was I bought a few more stocks. I bought like Apple. I'm looking at my portfolio, but then I finally figured out buying index funds because I later learned, I was like, oh, shoot, even though my individual stocks are doing well, let's be real. Like, I do not know all the metrics, right, to successfully invest into an individual stock with fidelity, right? So for me, I was like, I need to stop risk. I love the risk. I love getting the returns, but I was thinking about future me. I was like, let's just do an index fund. And I loved watching a lot of YouTubers like Our Rich Journey, who's a couple who's retired in their 40s with 2 kiddos. And they like inspired me a lot to buy ETFs and index funds. It's just like the lazy investing way, right? And it's garnered me a lot, pretty good returns. So for example, in my Roth IRA, that's mostly index funds and ETFs, I have a 65% return since 2020. Not bad, right?
And how much are you investing per month?
That's a good question. Nearly $3,000.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
2.5 to 3.
Talk about a savings rate to throw a heck of a lot of money in there. And again, like what I love about your story is you're a teacher. And it's just like, it just reinforces this idea that it's not about how much you're making. It's about how much you're able to save and then invest and live accordingly. You're simply throwing $3,000 a month into, I would assume at this point, just index funds?
Yeah, index funds. So like I throw about $2,000 into my 457B, which is like a teacher retirement account, into the S&P 500 index fund. And then I maxed out my Roth IRA. It's mostly total stock market, like VTSAX, or right now I'm trying to get more international exposure, so VXUS.
So
What's
for
that?
a full breakdown, of course, of your portfolio, everybody and anybody should go on to Blossom and take a deeper
Yep.
dive into her portfolio. But do you still hold those individual stocks as well?
Yes, I hardly ever sell. So I still have Nvidia, Apple. I still have Qualcomm too.
How much are we up on Qualcomm?
I know, right? Let's see. So for Qualcomm, I kind of stopped investing in it a little bit, but right now it's up 61%. Yeah.
And that's simply from just holding on. You haven't invested more into it. Now, that is the magic of investing, but of course, a lot of investors do this unfortunate thing of selling every now and then when emotions get going and there's volatility. So how would you recommend that investors go about actually remaining calm during the eye of a storm, which is typically in the market? I mean, it's just volatility.
Yeah. So for me, I would recommend they don't check their portfolio very often. When I was in the beginning stages, I would check every day, maybe twice a day. But that really makes you feel fearful, and that sparks your amygdala. That's the psychology part of me, but like that's the part of your brain that activates when you're in fear. So so already just from the start, get rid of that source and maybe just check your investments once a week Or for me, I just check it like maybe once or twice a month now.
Do you read news headlines at all? Because I feel like a lot of the times investors will tune in, sometimes at least, to the news, and we see
Yeah.
what's going on around us in the world, and immediately fear creeps in. And then we go to the
No,
portfolio and
right?
then see it's red, and then it's like this
I don't think
compounding effect in a
so.
negative direction.
Yeah.
So do you check macroeconomics at all? Like, do they matter to you, or you really just don't look at any of that?
Yeah, I do just like to a certain like little extent. So for example, I read people's newsletters, like the Blossom newsletter. I read Eric Pan's newsletter, but I just know, and like politics, of course, like I understand like when the president makes a decision, like the market drops. So to me, I do like look at some of the macro news, but I just know I gotta keep on. I kind of look at it from a very far lens. I don't look into it basically. So I see all the headlines, but I don't look super into it. I just know like my strategy is so firm. I'm gonna keep this long term. I do not care what's going on in the news. Like, I care, of course, but I do not care how it affects my investments. Because in the short term, some people do care, right? If they're day trading or doing options trading, that's when people really read the news. But for me, since I'm a long-term investor, I just know I'm just chilling.
So I love the approach, similar to mine, long term. But not everybody, like you shared, is a long-term investor. And I think a lot of individuals try to, I want to say, shortchange the system, or what I always like to say, get rich by Tuesday. And we
Mm-hmm.
typically do that in a couple of different ways. One of which is like the day trading or investing into penny stocks or the most trendiest stock. And then, of course, there's also income producing funds that are new and hot and exciting right now. But this approach of really being delayed on gratification is not new, but I feel like a lot of people don't go in that direction. For whatever reason, I don't know, but I'd be
Mm-hmm.
curious to catch your thoughts on it and how you exactly go about delaying gratification for the long-term win.
I love that. So I think for me, the folks in my lives, like whether it's my colleagues or friends who I do see like day trading or selling things quickly, I think they have a lot of hope that I think they are very educated. Like, don't get me wrong. So I think they use part of like what they learn, like, oh, if I do these strategies, I could get rich pretty quickly. But it's like confirmation bias, right? It's like you have this knowledge and you see it's like happening for other people. So I think, and they're just hopeful they're going to keep going and doing that. So how I practice delayed gratification is I think I just keep my life really simple. Like I'm a pretty simple person. I think I value experiences and my friends and family over things. And for example, I don't buy a lot of clothes, makeup. I still have a really old 2011 Toyota Corolla that my parents gave me when I was in college. So I think a lot of it is based on your values. So for me, I don't really care about getting a new car. I don't care about the newest like trends. So that's why it's kind of easy for me based on that.
Do you think we need to have skin in the game for a long term to change our value system? Because again, it's like I did speak to an investor earlier just today, and we were talking about values as well to some extent, and how you kind of need to play life simple. Then you get more money to put in the market, but then you start making more money in the market, and you realize you don't really want to take it out of the market, nor do you want to spend it. So you've simplified your life. I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, how do we help investors simplify for the maximum gain?
Yeah, it's a good question. For me, I'm trying to think because it's funny because you and I have the delayed gratification mindset, so it's kind of hard to like change gears and be like, what are they thinking? Which is like in a non-judgmental way because I'm sure they're trying to maximize their money. Like who's not? I think people might think, okay, maybe it's greener on the other side, right? Or the more risk I take, the more reward I will get, which can be true, but that's also the opposite. I do know somebody who is day trading and losing thousands of dollars. I'm like, So I think for me, what can we tell them? I guess what we can tell them is like, don't always trust the hype you see. Trust like research, trust people, like you said, like the millionaires next door who have lived and built their wealth in a very long but very simple way.
Davy, on the other end of the spectrum, there's the people who have a ton of risk, take on a ton of risk. Then there's the people who take on little to no risk, but they have a long stretch of time to take on some risk. And what they tend to do, and I was guilty of this from the start, is go like all in on income and dividend investing. And I don't think that's bad, but I do think an investor over time should be adapting and growing and kind of investing accordingly. So what are your thoughts on investors who are young, let's say early 20s, mid 20s, even late 20s, that are so heavily focused on just dividends for income?
I think with that, they have so many years to retire. So if they're in their like late 20s, if they want to retire at the, regular age of 65, they still have like 35 years. So I think telling them like growth is good and income is good, but like you're going to get the income later in life. So for me, I'm more right now just like focused on just like getting 10% in the market, right? So I think I would tell people it's like it's okay to slow your roll and adjust. Like you said, Ari, I think one of the beautiful things is that I was so focused on maximizing. I was like, I want to get individual stocks. I was into options trading, and that was exhilarating. But then I figured this is not sustainable. I do not want to keep on waking up at 6:30 in the morning.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, right. And like already be on high alert with all these like stocks, right, going up and down. So I think for me, it's that telling them, it's okay to be excited and to try to like grow your and maximize your portfolio, but it's also okay to slow down and just also invest like in index funds and kind of just be happy with your growth in general.
Do you think enough people look at their growth and enjoy the satisfaction of like how far they came, or do you think most of us are just on this chase for more constantly?
I think it can be both. For example, like I'm pretty happy with my growth and I don't want more. I'm like, I think this is really high. It can get. But I'm also guilty of wanting more, you know what I mean? So I think it's both. Like for example, like I've increased my income a lot with teaching, but also with content creation. So just some context for folks like California, single, no kids yet, renting. I've reached like maybe about $40,000 in content creation, but next year I'm like, I want to make $60,000 or $100,000. So I definitely am not super like I'm happy with my investment growth, but I'm like wanting more in my income.
Sure. Now, so that begs the question, right? Because you can easily go into more individual growth stocks even. Why go with just indexes?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to how much energy and effort do you want to put in. So for me, it's like a bell curve. So like, or what's that one term with economics? It's like when how much effort you put, like diminishing returns, right? Like how much more effort do I want to put in to get that much more profit or income? So for me, I'm like really happy with how much I've gained. Like, I told you like my portfolio for my individual brokerage account has been 53%. And for my Roth IRA, it's been 65% positive return. So it's like if I spend 5 more hours this week learning about learning about stocks and looking at the news, like how much more will my returns increase? 5%? Is that worth it to me? You know what I mean? How
I
about
like
you,
how you,
Ari? How do you see it?
I love, first of all, how you look at that. Like, is it asking yourself constantly, is it really worth it? Like, another question that got me was, how am I celebrating my wins? Because for such a long time, I just didn't celebrate anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the value of everything I was doing, it was like, for what? Like, what's your
Yeah.
point, right? Like, what am I doing this all for? And that's
Mm-hmm.
when I actually started celebrating more of my wins. Hence, I'm I'm in Cabo right now, right?
Yay,
And I think
Mexico.
that's so important. How do you celebrate your wins? Do you think that's even important if you're not already millionaire status?
Oh my gosh, Ari, I think about this like every 3 days because I'm the
So I'll
same.
see you in Cabo in a couple days, right?
No, I was the same way. I just kept on, when growing up, you had to work hard and like I love my parents, but they don't not the type to say I love you or great job. So I've learned to like be high achieving, just go and like you don't really celebrate yourself. But in the last few years, I've kind of slowed down and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give myself a nice dinner. Or I actually bought this bracelet from a jury when I think I reached like 20,000 followers on Instagram or something. Because I really don't stop and breathe and enjoy my wins. So that's something I'm trying to improve. Because you're right. What's this all for? Like money is a means, right? So the whole point of this, of me wanting to retire early at 45 is to spend time with my parents, my boyfriend, my family, my friends. But if I'm not doing that now, I'm not going to be prepared to do that when I do retire. So, and like right now I'm financially stable. So instead of waiting 10, 15 years to like celebrate, I'm like, I should probably build those habits now.
How do you set those goals? Like, how do you know what milestone that you're going to implement in order to then buy the bracelet or go to Cabo if you're me, right? Or like whatever you're doing, like how
Oh
do
yeah.
you personally set those goals?
I don't. I think it's so sweet, but my friends and family remind me. They're like, Davy, you should go get dinner. Or yeah, you should buy the bracelet. Because I'm like, should I do this? Or like, should I go to Mexico City? Or should I go to Hawaii? They're like, yeah. Like it doesn't have it doesn't have to be like a certain follower count or income or like a return amount. I think it's when you feel like you have the time and that you should be easier on yourself. Like I'm really hard on myself. So I think in moments where I have to like ground myself, like, okay, what is it for? Girl, let's go get sushi. Yeah.
See, it's interesting because I feel like our personalities, of course, just being in the investing space, so similar. Like we don't have the off switch to be like, oh yeah, like I could just go buy the bracelet or I can like go on a trip. It's
Hmm.
just go, go, go. And I feel like it does take an army of people around us to hold us accountable to
Yes.
enjoy. And so,
Hmm.
who have been some instrumental figures in your life that have really helped you find that balance? And how important is it to formulate a strong circle of people that you can trust and rely on to guide you in that direction when need be?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. I love how like even though this is about money, we're always going back to like community and our loved ones. For me, definitely my best friend Monita. I actually influenced her to start Fire, but she's always like, "You should buy a book," or like, "You should relax this weekend." So she really
And
grounds.
you're like, you should go make money.
Yeah, I'm like, "Have you tried a side hustle?"
Yeah.
Like, you should try freelancing.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
So my best friend, my partner, he's so chill. Like balances me so much because he sees me, Ari. Like I'll be working at 7 p.m. hunched over like my laptop, and he's like, "Did you like drink water yet?" I was like, "Oh, thank you." I'm like, "I have a headache." He's like, "Did you eat? Did you go outside? Did you drink water?" I was like, "You know what? I did not today. Thank you."
Been trading these options. No, it's such a. I feel like even in my own life, like having that circle around you that can actually tell you instead of go go go, enjoy 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 because naturally we are of that breed that's just go, and
Yes.
so sometimes we need that counterbalance. Now here's an interesting question for you, just because of the amount I feel like you're probably researching on any given day or any given week, the next opportunity. There are so many opportunities in the market, whether it's individual stocks, whether it's cryptocurrencies now, or income ETFs, just ETFs in general. How do you know which investment opportunities to go for? Like, how do you pick them? How did you even figure out which ones to build your portfolio with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I definitely want something with broad exposure. So I started off with S&P 500. It does great returns. And however, I've been kind of changing my investment portfolio a little bit because the S&P 500 is so tech heavy. I'm not quite equally investing in those 500 companies, as you know, like they're capped, right? So recently I figured, so much of my investments are in American stocks, which is performing great. But in times where it won't, I need to diversify a little bit more. So recently I read a blog on Substack and I was like, shoot, I need to get more international stocks. So VXUX is what I've been mostly buying my portfolio just to balance it out. Because I think right now 95% of my individual stocks rather are American. So I'm trying to beef it up a little bit with the international funds. And I also look into like low expense ratios. So anything like below 0.50%, expense ratio is also good for me. But and also I like growth stocks too. So sometimes, I'll cover the basics, right? But then I'm like, let's look into VGT. Like, let's try to get.
It's more tech heavy, some more growth
Yeah,
in there. Now,
exactly.
when it comes to ETFs, the expense ratio is something that you mentioned. Do you ever go above your how much did you say you look for in the
Like
expense ratio?
0.50 or less.
0.5 or less. So
Hmm.
there are some pretty unique products out there these days that are
Hmm.
the income, right, producing products. There's the biggest trend I feel like since sliced bread.
Hmm.
The expense ratios on those are way higher. Do you think they're worth it? Do you think they're worth it for a certain type of investor, or do you think most investors should really just stray away from these funds?
That's a great question and something I'm actually looking into, Ari, and I would love to ask you about it. But for me, I think most beginning investors should start off with the low expense ratios. But I've seen some target date funds that kind of have a higher expense ratio, like zero point 0.8. And that might work for folks who are just like, you know what, I just want to retire in 2060. Please just manage it for me. But I might consider looking into those like growth stocks that you were talking about. So can you tell, or the income ones? Can you tell me a little bit more about them? And like, what do you think? Because I'd love to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah. So personally, I don't know if you've, heard me say before, but like over time, you probably haven't. I mean, I said it, I think, a dozen times when I was on the mic at
Hmm.
Blossom. But I think every investor is honestly fooling themselves, depending on their investor profile. And we get so super attracted to income now that we
Hmm.
forget about the long-term victory that we could have. Because as you probably know, the more money that you invest in income-oriented products, the more you're actually going to get out of them. So I'd rather skip out on the $5 worth of income today and
Hmm.
go towards growth when I have, another 10, 20, 30 years to invest, and then slowly start to transition once I'm not in that accumulation phase into more income producing products. But here's the thing, I think, with today's trendy products, and this is I think a hot take here, so brace
Okay.
yourself.
All right, I'm
I,
ready.
I think a lot of investors are not reading that prospectus, and so they're getting invested into some of these funds, not realizing that they're taking on so much leverage. And once they see these things drop, they freak out and they sell and they lose money. And so, who's really winning? The Wall Street execs who are creating all these products, not necessarily the retail investor.
Ooh, I like that.
And that's, like I said, it's a hot take, and
Hmm.
I'm all for all these funds. But again, a lot of these funds are even created to be reset daily, which is just something like maybe Wall Street can do a better job in sharing that, being a little bit more boisterous. But also, we have to realize, and I love your thoughts on this, we have to realize as investors that Wall Street isn't exactly here for us. We are playing this game for ourselves. Wall Street is playing the game for itself.
Oh
And
yeah.
so there's kind of this, I'd love for there to be a stronger bridge. But I feel like right now, what it really just comes down to is like each and every man or woman for themselves, read that prospectus, know what you're getting invested into. So I guess I want to ask you this. Why in the world do so many people just kind of willy-nilly freely trust anything and everything that they read or see from Wall Street or the alike, even YouTubers?
Hmm.
Where are we going wrong, and why aren't we doing that necessary research for ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it lends itself to like credibility. So whenever we see like Wall Street Journal or like Wall Street, branded on something, we're like, oh yeah, they're the people who run it. Like that's they're experts. So I think that part too. And then with YouTubers, it's definitely YouTubers and people who do social media are very smart. They number one come off with their authority. They kind of say like, I used to be in Wall Street or I've been investing for X amount of years and then now I'm retired. So for sure, I will say I buy into the credibility as well. I think also people have this idea that because I see this person do it, that this is what happens with everybody. So instead of just seeing that as it's actually really unreliable if you think about it. When in storytelling is when you just go off of somebody's story. Sorry, or you can probably cut this part off. But I'm just like trying to think of that word where it's just it's another word for story. account. Okay, I'm just gonna start over. I think when people see somebody else's story on YouTube and it's broadcasted, they think that everybody does that. Where in fact, maybe it's just kind of like being not cherry picked per se, but when you're trying to make an argument, sometimes saying somebody's story is very powerful because it seems like, oh, I know there's an actual person who made it possible to retire early or buy this income ETF and go big and win. But in fact, like, are they looking at reports and studies and saying, well, how about the average person like is working for them? So I think it's easy to get fixated on a few people's story and start to think that's a general population's experience where they should be really looking at what actually works for everybody. Sorry, I guess that's what I'm trying to say right there.
It totally makes sense. So my next question for you then is like, how do we know who to trust? Like if everybody's kind of trying to establish themselves with credibility, I mean, I do it, you do it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We've been investing for X amount of years and here's what we're investing into and people listen to us. But like, I try to be as objective as possible for everyone listening. It's like, how do people know who to really trust? How should we go about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think now that I'm thinking, we can't trust every anecdote, right? So just with research in general, we have to corroborate our sources. So is what Ari is saying, is what Davy is saying, is also what Fidelity is saying, or Vanguard's like newsletters, or the research that has been going on. So I think being able to look at your sources, being able to critique them, and see that are these data points and statistics like true throughout these different sources. So corroboration is a really good skill.
So something I've heard a lot out there and working, I don't want to establish much credibility right now, but working even on Wall Street, right? I hear a lot of things and then doing a lot of these interviews, I've also adapted my strategies. So something we often hear is this concept of diversification. And I feel like a lot of investors think that diversification just comes down to loading up your portfolio with 20, 30, 40, 50. I've heard of portfolios of like 80, 100 plus holdings. To me, that's bonkers. What changed the game for me was something that Bill Ackman shared many moons ago when he was on stage, took the mic and shared that at any given moment, there's really only like 5 high quality stocks out there. So put all your conviction in like the top 5 stocks in your portfolio. Will it be more volatile? Yes, but there's opportunity there for growth if you really believe in them. And then the other end of this is just talking to a lot of folks who have been extremely successful in the market. It turns out that their portfolios hold less, not more. And so I'd love to get your take on what does that look like? What exactly is an ideal portfolio structure? Is that with less stocks, more stocks, just ETFs, a single ETF, 2 fund portfolio? Like what's the ideal?
I think for me, I definitely did not start with the ideal. I do not have the ideal because if you look at my portfolio, it's definitely, you can see the history and the learning, right? So I'm like, ooh, look at all these stocks. And then like, ooh, index funds and ETFs. Ooh, and REITs. So for me, it's like all over the place, not gonna lie. But if I were to, and I do have a lot of holdings, I'm like, I look at them like, oh my gosh, Dobby, what were you doing? But I think for me, it's when I think of diversified, I think of definitely an index fund. And then if you want to like play around a little bit, like 1 or 2 stocks, I definitely want some dividend yielding stocks as well, like REITs. And maybe play a little bit crypto, like 1% in crypto. So to me, that is safe enough, but also a little bit fun. And you get to kind of play around with some of the more innovative sexy stocks, I guess. So I think it's a balance of like for me, that kind of it basically satisfies my interest. So to summarize, basically index funds, a little bit of ETFs, maybe some real estate, and then maybe play around with a little bit of crypto, like very, very little.
So do you like to do a lot of like fundamental research or is it more of the qualitative research and the interest, I'll say? Because a lot of investors will just, hey, if I'm using a MacBook right now, I might as well invest in Apple and I use that product, so I might as well invest in that company. Is there a approach that you would advise or suggest for investors to go about picking some of these stocks?
Yeah, I think so. For me, I do like very like qualitative. You say like, if I hear about it, I'll buy it, and I'll look into it too, right? So For example, something that I bought recently is VGT. I did hear about it on a YouTube video, right? So I looked into it and I just look at the 5-year returns, like the expense ratios, and I'm thinking, okay, these are tech companies. So that's kind of like I do like that level of research. I'm not super professional that way, so and I just kind of start small. I buy a little bit and then see how that goes as well. It's like right now it's like yielding 55%.
I'm going to ask you a hot seat question because I know
Okay.
you don't like to sell, but every now and then, every investor is forced to take a good look at themselves and say, like, is it time to sell a certain position? Have you ever sold a position before? And if you have or haven't, either way, how do you know when exactly is the ideal time to sell?
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, I did sell Nvidia probably a few months ago.
Oh,
Just
shoot.
be- I know, not like maybe like 4 or 5 months ago. I think it was just reaching like over 100%. And I just thought, oh my gosh, am I being greedy? Like, do I keep it? Do I sell it? And the emotional part of me was like, you're being greedy, like just sell it. So I sold probably like 10 out of my 12 shares. And then so I kind of regret that, but I kind of don't because I made what I made and I had to be satisfied with my decision.
I was going to ask, is that a regret? And if so, like, how do you go about dealing with that? Because that happens a lot. Someone will sell out of a position, whether they make money or lose money, like, regret seems to taper in shortly thereafter.
Oh my God. I did feel regret, especially when your best friend has Nvidia and she like held on to it and then I'm just like you compare
Is
and
she,
you're
is
like
she the one telling you to go out for the coffee? I held on to my Nvidia stock. Go out for coffee.
oh but yeah, so I think part of me you definitely feel like like an ass. You're like, why did I do that? Like, why did I let my emotions get to me? But then you just tell yourself, you know what, Davi, like you still made 90%. Like be happy with yourself. Like you cannot predict the future. Um, like we said, right? Be nice to yourself and just move forward. Like use that money. I forgot what I used it for. I think I like now you can use that money to do whatever you want, whether it's go on a vacation or help pay off or start saving for my summer accounts because as a teacher I don't get paid over the summer. I've worked for 10 and a half months, so for July and August I'm on my own, so that I can use that for my savings. So I think just moving forward and stop thinking about the past is the best way to go.
I love that. It's also interesting to think about, for a teacher, right? You only work 10 and a half months. So you take on more side hustles in the summertime, like, or does it become more of a worry for your portfolio when the summertime comes around? It's like, I'm not going to
Yeah.
have money to invest. What if the market drops and there's an opportunity to invest? What do you do about that?
That's a great question. So for me, prior, I used to work summer school for about 4 weeks, but that took up most of my summer. Then I worked 2 weeks of summer. I was like, no, I can't. So I don't work summer school anymore. I save enough, but yeah, I don't invest nearly as much during summer, and it hurts. But what I've been doing is some of the side hustles I do are called focus groups, where you apply to a bunch of applications and you get paid to speak to companies, give them feedback about their product or service. That's pretty good money. Like sometimes like $100 an hour. I've people can also tutor. I've also been doing some like personal finance coaching, helping people open their Roth IRAs and their 457Bs. So some people pay me for that too. And I think the biggest source of income definitely has been content creation. So luckily, I have been making money through affiliates and brand deals. So I think this summer I can finally start investing. Yay!
We'll have you back on in the summer. It's a summer time with Davi.
Yes.
So here's an interesting question for you when it comes to investing in your portfolio and trying to figure out how much money to put into what holding. So it's like, okay, you get paid and now you got to divvy out this income into your portfolio. How do you choose which stock to actually load up on or put more money into?
Yeah. So for me, I think I try to automate things. So for the $2,000 I put into my 457B, which is only for 10 months, I just put in the S&P 500. I'm like, oh, I don't want to think about it. And then with my Roth IRA and brokerage account, I do have more. I'm like, what do I do this month? So for me, I think I just I'm like, I could buy a stock, I could buy more Nvidia, but I'm like, no, no, no. So I think for me, I'm trying to decrease the amount of decisions I make. I think teachers make over like 1,000 decisions a day. So I've just been keeping it simple. I've just recently bought more international funds because I think I'm trying to balance my portfolio, like let's say 80% American domestic funds, and I'm trying to increase my international funds to be 20%. So I think right now it's about like 595. I'm trying to figure it out.
Do you have any intentions of selling individual holdings and just going all in on ETFs and indexes?
Ooh, no, I don't. I do think about it, but I think that at the end of the day, it's just more work for me.
Sure, you don't even want to touch it.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting because like you take like a Jeff Bezos for example, and despite popular belief with Jeff Bezos
Hmm.
and the alike, a lot of these high level executives say that they only make like one or two high level decisions a day. And when I think about that, I'm like, okay, if Bezos and some of these other guys are only making like one or two high level decisions a day, why am I trying to make a dozen? So it
Yes.
becomes really interesting. And then you start to take that and look at your own portfolio. And again, like a Warren Buffett, right? Not even touching his portfolio.
Hmm.
So with that, then how do you know when your portfolio is sufficiently built, whether to add a holding or not? Like, isn't that's a pretty big decision? At least I
Yes.
feel like to add holdings in. How do you know if you should, when you should, and how you should?
Yeah. All right. Honestly, I don't. To be honest, I'm like, because after watching some of your videos, I'm like, should I get more
Oh no.
dividend, right? ETFs? Like, should I get some more income? Like, I start to question, like, when is enough enough? Yeah, I actually would love insight from you. I know if like, now I'm interviewing, but I honestly
The
want to
tables
ask.
have turned. No,
Yes, I really
let
want to
me get
ask.
my script.
I know.
No, so it's a super interesting question, and I think over the years that I've been investing, and of course everybody and anybody's welcome to comment down there in the comments and tell me I'm
Mhm.
flat out wrong. That's totally cool. But from my experience, I think less has become more for sure.
Mhm.
And the more I followed through on that Bill Ackman advice or suggestion rather to really double down on your top five, that's when I saw my portfolio skyrocket. And ever since then,
Wow.
I personally like I will have, for example, Visa was down a couple weeks ago. I think it still is down. It looks
Mhm.
like a great stock. I mean, it is a great. I used to hold it. Great
Mhm.
stock, great company, great brand. Not really going anywhere for the foreseeable future. It's got dividend growth in there as well. But I asked myself, well, you said that you only wanted to hold five, like at most seven holdings in your portfolio.
Mhm.
So is Visa really a high conviction stock, or is it just something that you feel would be a good buy right now and you're a little bored? And so
Yes.
that line of questioning always comes in for me. And honestly, because I have 3 decades plus probably left to go as an investor, even investing during some of these high highs, I'm all in still. I just think like you mentioned Nvidia, so we'll run with that. I look
Mhm.
into the future and I say, well, what is Nvidia going to look like in 10 and 20 years from now? Surely I think it will grow. And
Yeah.
so I'm not really afraid to buy at some of these highs. And again, that might be against popular opinion, but it's worked so far.
Mhm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. So I think for me, when it comes to like, what do I buy now? Like, should I just stay the course and do index funds? I also get bored. And I'm like, what should I buy next? So like for me, after I had sold Nvidia and had like only 2 shares left, I was like, I kind of sprinkled in a little bit more. I'm like, you know what? I do believe that Nvidia is going to grow more because look at AI, look at all these technology, like they're building new sites for more workers. Like it seems like they need this technology more and more with all the companies. Sorry, I'm blanking out. So from what I see, like you're right, what we have to think long term in the next 10, 20 years, do we foresee that NVIDIA are still being used? And yeah, I do feel confident, like even though it's reached such a high peak, it could go even more.
So this is where it's almost interesting to watch investors react to the market and just react to news and pull out of the market when in all seriousness, I mean, if we're looking at that long-term picture, if you look at a stock, you have high conviction on it, and you think in 10 and 20 years, I mean, it's only going to continue to improve, and the sector itself will continue to be in a boom cycle. Why pull your money out? How do we train our emotions? Can we even train our emotions to stay level-headed and balanced and in the game?
Yeah, I think we can. I think over time, I've become more of a calm investor. In the first few years, I was really stoked on looking at the returns and seeing like if I should sell or buy more. But over time, I really think it just knows like you said, you have high conviction in your securities. So knowing that you're not buying it because it's just like a meme coin or that it's just the hype right now. But do you truly believe, like for example, Apple, I'm happy to buy more Apple. I'm happy to buy more VGT. So for me, I can like throw like if the next, for example, the next paycheck I get, I can probably throw in like 30% of it into an individual stock like Nvidia or Apple, and I can just throw 70% in the rest into an ETF.
Okay, let me ask you this, because you're throwing around this term throw. I throw this money into the market. You
Right.
make it sound easy. Like, it's like monopoly money over
No.
here. So what would you say to the folks who are out there who's like, I just don't have that money. I don't have money to put into the market at all. And meanwhile, Davi's over here throwing it in.
I know. Oh my gosh, it sounds so privileged, but I am.
How do you like what? Because it's also, I mean, I'm going to be real. I think a lot of it is an excuse. People really can't find money to invest, but they can buy Starbucks coffees every day. It's like how I look at it. What would you say to these people who are just throwing around that excuse? I don't have the money to invest.
I think for them, I think we just go back to like if they know, listen, you can actually invest $5. You can invest $1. I think people could change their mind. And I think people would have to see it for themselves. And then when I say throw, in terms of like, I think it's in terms of not just the amount of money, but also just the mindset. Like, I know if I just invest this money and keep it in there, I'm going to be fine. So throwing it in the sense of like, I trust the process. And I think that's what would tell people too. Is like, you do not have to be an expert. You do not have to watch another video. Like, just try investing with a small amount that you could lose, and then just see what happens after.
I love that advice. Just see what happens after. It's almost like you need the experience, and that experience is tuition almost.
Yes.
So, okay, let's say you start throwing money in as an investor, you're learning, and as you go, there are some common mistakes that are typically made. We want to avoid those common mistakes. So what would you share with all of us that, at least from your experience and what you've seen, are the most common mistakes, and which ones should we avoid?
Okay, so definitely the first mistake is waiting too long to invest. So people waiting months to get a promotion or get somewhere in their career. I think another mistake that people make is that they kind of don't understand their accounts and the different purposes it holds. So like you can basically a pre-retirement account is good to lower your taxable income, and the Roth IRA is really great for tax-free gains. How that works together in retirement, and also how do you want to use your brokerage account? So a lot of people have questions like, what accounts do I open, or which one's better than the other? And it's none of them are better than the other. It just depends on your goals. And people ask me that, I'm like, I can't tell you what your goals are. It's like depends on what you want for yourself. So I think understanding the different investment vehicles is really important. And I think another big mistake people make is getting really emotional and selling their investments. So they need to hold long term. They need to hold like 5+ years.
And the best approach for that, you would say, is just literally don't look at your account.
Yeah, don't look at your account, or as least amount as you can. Like maybe once a week. But even then, just look at it and then just sign out. Like don't do anything funny.
Yeah. It's arguably the hardest thing ever, I think, to do, especially for someone money oriented or stock market driven. All right, from all of your experience now, I want your top 2 investments that have been the best investments you've ever made. I want one of them to be a stock market investment, and then the other one actually just from life. Like, what have you actually invested in that has really set you up well for success today? Not, of course, in the stock market.
Okay. Something in the stock market I'm just really proud of because it's my highest returning one, and it's VTSAX, is Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index Fund, and it's in my Roth, and it's returned 126%.
Wow. Let's
Yes.
go.
So I'm just really proud of myself because it's so simple, right? Just buy and hold a dollar cost average or front load if you can. And for an investment that I've made that's not monetary, I guess would honestly be betting on myself. Because prior, like I wouldn't be here, Ari, without you if I wasn't bored 3 years ago, had COVID, couldn't work for a week, and just started making videos. I was like, you know what? I'm tired of what people think. I don't care. I'm just gonna post videos. And I've been consistent for the last 3 years, and it's landed me so many amazing opportunities, and I've met such amazing people. Um, and this is a dream for me. Like talking to like-minded people like yourself, Ari, and about investing. Like, who wants to talk to me about investing at work?
How did you get over that fear exactly? Like, how did you get over the? Because it laps into investing as well, right? There's this crazy fear, I'm going to lose money. A crazy fear, what are people going to think of me, a content creating? But you got over this fear. What's the recommendation on how to get over that fear?
For me, the fear that I got over with content creation, I got over myself because, because we think, oh, my coworkers, what are they going to think? Oh, my family, my friends, like, they're going to see how much money I make. And it's like, this is called the spotlight effect. We tend to think that people care more about us than they actually do. Whereas people are so busy and worried about their own lives, they're not gonna like, hey Ari, like, let me see his video back in 2020, or like, I did that because I wanted to.
I was gonna say some people do that. I get the
Oh,
comment
you're
sometimes, the
right.
notification. They're like, I just watched a video from 2019 and it sucked. It's like,
Oh
oh,
no,
you
I'm
were
sorry.
totally wrong.
Oh
Like
no,
no, I embrace
we're the
those comments. I
outliers.
love them.
We're the outliers. We're
Because
like,
look, it goes to show that, even in 2019 or 2020, everyone's sharing their thoughts and opinions. We're not experts. No one can predict the future. And if anything, keeping those videos up for people to see just illustrates the point that this is like anybody's game.
absolutely.
So I think it's a win for anybody and everybody. My last question for you, let's just say, Davy, I had $10,000 right now to throw your way, and you can invest that 10 grand anywhere you'd like to. Where would you invest it and why?
Okay. I would, thank you for the $10,000. I would I would front load my Roth IRA for 2026. Boring, but I would. I don't want to worry about it. And then I would save the other $3,000 for my summer rent because I have not saved for that yet. Boring, but that's what I would do.
Boring but effective, and investing is never meant to be fun if you're doing it right. And so they say, investors, join me in taking a deeper dive into Davi's portfolio on Blossom. It's all there for you to look into. And of course, you can even DM her, especially if you don't think this is all possible as a teacher. She's here to prove you wrong. And Davy has been a very insightful hour with you here on Masters of the Market. Thank you for joining us, investors. Till the next go round of Masters of the Market, we will catch you all in the next one.